Hello, and welcome to MrTennek reads to you a random piece of adult fiction off the internet. Well, actually, the random part's a bit of a lie. I've kind of been harassed. Yes, that's the only word I can think of to describe what I've been put through for the past 6 years. Harassed by a rather deranged individual whose name shall remain anonymous, who was unhappy with the fact that I never finished the reading of Colleen's Piss Party. Now, for those of you who have been around with me, or have been subscribed to my channel, I should say, since late 2007? Or no, I'm sorry, it was early 2008 when the first sex story video went up. That was the very first story, the very first adult fiction story I ever read was Colleen's Piss Party. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. I did find a Lord of the Rings piece of adult fan fiction, but I couldn't bring myself to read it. Maybe now that I'm older, 6.5 years older, perhaps I could weather that story and try to get through it. But I'm not going to be trying that. No, we're just, guess I'm going to have to finish this piss party. Certainly a phrase I never thought I'd be saying anytime during my life. But, let's see here. Amazingly enough, sexstoriespost.com still exists. Imagine my surprise when I punched that in and hit enter and this popped up. And the story still exists. Yes, thank goodness for that. Let's see here. Where did we leave off? Suck my load out, you filthy piss whore? Yeah, that sounds familiar. Piss in her face, mate. Piss all over my bloody cock. I definitely recall that. Okay, everything after that doesn't look familiar. I think this is the part where I abandoned reading this. I'm not entirely certain why. And then I moved on to, of course, what was it now that I read? My Great Dane's Boy Bitch? Was that it? Was that it? There were so many, literary classics that I read back then. Back in good old 2008, back when these sensual stories were just at their prime, their creative prime, their literative prime. I'm just going to keep throwing the word prime out there because my vocabulary is next to non-existent currently because I'm tired. I believe I was narrating this in a British voice, if I'm not mistaken. I did just I should probably say before I even start reading this friggin' thing that I had a tooth pulled recently and my mouth is still healing. So if I sound a bit off or a bit wonky with my pronunciations or anything like that, or if you suddenly hear the sound of, liquid gushing out of my mouth and me screaming in agony, it's because I've torn the hole that's sealed shut now in my mouth open. And, yeah, bone matter and blood is just gushing all over the place. So, anyways, enough dinking around, enough beating around the bush. Let's get back to this urine-soaked, erotica, as it were. Okay then, well I hope, if you're unfamiliar with how this story went up until this point, I mean we're at least 3/4 of the way through the story, so I don't have that much to read. But I recommend you go back to the first part, listen to it. You have to listen to my nasally, 21-year-old voice, sounding a bit like this, reading it. Anyways, let's get this started. Because I'm really trying to avoid reading this. Okay, let's go now! Let's go. Holding his piss-slick erection, Sean aimed his penis at Colleen's face and began to squeeze down and apply a steady pressure over his bladder. Pissing with an erection wasn't all that easy, as he'd found on many a morning waking up with heavy wood and having to unload the nights drinking down the toilet. I'm sorry, what? And having to unload the night's drink? Okay, I have no idea what that is. Maybe that's some British vernacular there, or slang. Does Sean just drink out of the toilet every night? Well, I mean, he does enjoy, the flavor of piss, as it were, so maybe he does. I'm not gonna judge the man, this fictitious man. As Colleen continued to nurse Patrick's swollen member, Sean began forcing the honey gold flow of his urine up his sex tube and began spraying it over Patrick's erection, now fully buried in Colleen's sucking mouth. So now they're both pissing on each other. It's turning a bit homoerotic here. Scroll down. With each stroke up and down over Patrick's lust-engorged member, Colleen could taste the faint traces of vodka and apple mixed together with the bitter saltiness of Sean's urine. Her tongue burned slightly, and her taste buds seemed to sharpen as she allowed the liquid to roll over her tongue and found herself slurping more and more of it from Patrick's meaty cock stalk. That was a mouthful for both myself and for Colleen. Sean aimed his heavy stream over Colleen's face, her hair now saturated as she closed her eyes to prevent them from burning by the salty mixture, and twisted her lips about the head of Patrick's cock to coax out his load so that she could consume it. Her breasts and belly were now drenched with the heated yellow streams jetting out of Sean's penis, her pussy soaked and throbbing with the building lust merely from the perverse nature of what she was now taking part in. Without warning, Patrick groaned and bucked his hips upward as a torrent of thick semen blasted against the roof of her mouth. I initially read that as just against the roof. One hell of an ejaculation that this Irishman has. I believe he was Irish when I originally read this. Really terrible Irish accent I gave him. Colleen whimpered as she felt another pulse of seed ripple up Patrick's member and splash against the back of her throat. With each stroke between her warm, sticky lips, Patrick's cock continued to pump spurt upon spurt of the milky mixture that Colleen sought to swallow down. Sean's piss flow, now slowing down, was directed towards the swollen knot of Colleen's clit, and instinctively her fingers flew to strum against the throbbing button as it was being pelted by the stinging urine. Oh god, there's somebody's talking here now. Who was Sean? Was Sean the one with the really burly voice, or I think it was.
Look at that bitch gobbling up the piss and the cum. She's really getting off on it.
Oh god, my mouth is really not in the shape to be doing these voices. I hope you're feeling guilty. He who shall not be named, who has coaxed me into doing this, I hope you're feeling incredibly guilty for putting me through this torture, for having a piece of bone pulled out of my mouth violently. Sean laughed as he shook the last drops of urine from his erection to splash over Colleen's nylon-encased legs. Who's talking now?
I want you to do the same thing for me, mate. But I want you to piss on my cock while I fuck her in the cunt and fill her up with a load of hot juice.
Oh, that hurts. Sean told his mate. With Patrick's prick knob wedged between her lips, Colleen continued to nurse up and down the length of his cock, relishing the tangy taste of his semen and Sean's pungent pee still slippery on it. Her mouth filled with the taste, she lashed out with her tongue against the spongy tip and groaned as her own orgasm pounded through her loins. She knew that she would have to take whatever the pair had in store for her and satisfy their lust-driven needs until they were fully spent and satisfied with her degradation. She also knew that she would have to satisfy herself, and perhaps at some point these two would share a spot in her private online journal, with images of them all sharing in these same wicked perversions. And that is the end of that. Well, that was certainly worth, reading through 6.5 years later. So thank you for that. Thank you. Again, he who I shall not name. So what is there to say, really? Really, what is there to say? I mean, I'm glad, hey, we all got closure now. I'm sure it was all, just eating away at the back of your minds. You were all just dying to know how this story ended. You couldn't just go online and look it up yourselves. You were all way too young back then. And I was this horrible conduit, just corrupting your minds with these hideous sexual stories. Lucky I didn't wind up in jail. Probably am gonna wind up in it now. Anyways, that's the end of that. So, I know I normally end these installments with a musical number, and I suppose I could do something like that. Question is what, though? And with my voice in the shape that it is, I really don't know if that's a smart idea, but, well, I guess we could give it a go. You know, just for old time's sake. For the sake of nostalgia, if you will. Question is, what song? I have to go through my list of shitty quality middies until I find one that seems appropriate, so if you'll give me a moment here. Alright, let's take a look. Let's see, what do we have here? What do we have here? How about Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues? I think that's very appropriate. You know? I mean, that's what I think of when I think of urinating on a woman during sexual intercourse. That's what the song's about, isn't it? Pretty sure that's what the band was writing about when they wrote this song. Ah, yes. Let's turn some, hold on. Get some reverb on my voice. There we go. Nights in white satin, always reaching the end, or never reaching the end, I'm sorry. Letters I've written, never meaning to send. Beauty I've always missed, with these eyes before. Just what the truth is, I can't say anymore, 'cause I love you. Yes, I love you. Oh, how I love you. That's it. You know what? I fulfilled my end of the bargain. I'm not going to be able to talk now for weeks. Auf Wiedersehen. You bunch of Schwanschlutzers. Goodbye.